O'clock, and thanks all for jumping on today for problem solving information and resources. And I am excited to have Liz Sandblom from Department of Developmental Services, who will be talking to us today about self-direction. And Liz is actually a part of the Commissioner's Office in Boston and will be overseeing and really leading some great initiatives around self-direction. Just to give you just a couple of housekeeping items, I have muted you all upon entry, and the reason being is that we're recording this session and it makes for a much better recording. So we're probably going to have Liz just go through her slides and then open it up for questions. So Liz, welcome, and why don't you take it away?
Good morning, and thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here today and talk about something that I love, self-directed services. I'm newly working in central office as a Deputy Assistant Commissioner of Operations, and I'm the lead in central office for self-direction. Prior to that, I had worked in the Greater Boston area office for about 9 years, and before that, I was in South Coastal for 17 years. So I've been with the department for a long time, and I've worked with a lot of really wonderful people within self-direction. So today I'm going to just give you an overview of self-direction and talk to you a little bit about what we've seen during the healthcare crisis that we've all been struggling with. Let's see. Now, Kerry, I cannot change the slide here. Oh, there we go. So DDS has 3 different service delivery options, and some of you may have heard bits and pieces of this presentation in the past, but we have traditional service delivery, we have agency with choice, and we have participant directed services. And both agency with choice and participant directed services are part of the self-direction model. And I'll explain that in just a minute. Let's see. Okay. So in 2014, the Commonwealth passed the Real Lives Law, and the purpose was to promote self-determination. So that's the individuals receiving DDS services get to talk about what their dreams are, what their wishes are, and how they want to reach those. And big part of this bill, it assured that self-direction support delivery model, as well as information, outreach, and training about self-direction and safeguards were all put into place. Okay. So the principles of self-determination are freedom. So people have the right, have the right to pursue things that are important to them. Authority over your own support budget and services that you're receiving. Support to help you organize resources in ways that enhance your life and are meaningful. And responsibility for the decisions that people make in their own lives. Okay, next slide. So it's really important for people to have visions for themselves and what they are looking forward to in their life. So this is Jacob, and his vision is to be a zookeeper. He likes to be able to choose, he wants to be able to choose his own schedule and spend time with family. He also talks about things that he doesn't want to do, which I think is really important. I don't think that's necessarily negative. So he doesn't want to be stuck inside. He doesn't want to do the same things day to day. And he wants to have the same, life as everyone else has. Okay, next slide. So self-directed supports, as I said earlier, DDS offers 2 self-directed support models. The first one is called agency with choice, and the second is the participant directed model. I'm going to explain the difference in future slides, but both self-directed models offer individuals, families, the opportunity to decide how they want to use their supports and make them really person person-centered and about what your vision and goals are. Next slide. Okay, so this is actually agency with choice, and my slide is a little funky here. So agency with choice is, it's sort of a hybrid. I sort of call it the Prius of self-direction. So there's an agency that has to be pre-qualified by DDS. We have a list of qualified agencies to provide the support. And the agency, in partnership with the individual or the family, they share the responsibilities. So the individual and the family is responsible for selecting employees, training employees about what you're looking for, what your goals are, what your vision is. The agency is responsible for all the employee paperwork related work, paying the workers, withholding taxes and all of the fringe benefits, workman compensation. The agency monitors the budget and supports the individual with any changes. So you're still able to make changes, but you need to work with the agency on those changes. And the agency can also help the individual connect with activities that fit their vision or their lifestyle in the community, help come up with ideas, help brainstorm, develop any chances for new opportunities that the individual is looking forward to, and offers some connections and social opportunities as well. And that's agency with choice. Next slide is the participant directed program. So this program is the responsibility really lies with the individual or the family member. And you create a plan through your vision and talk about all the support needs and develop a budget. The individual then makes decisions on how they want to use their DDS budget, working with a support broker or DDS service coordinator. The individual and the family are responsible for hiring and overseeing anyone that you're working with that's supporting you. And the individual works with your DDS support broker on an ongoing basis you can tweak your service delivery, you can customize it, you can learn from different experiences you have, and you can continue to change things depending on your person-centered planning throughout the time that you're receiving support. So it really is a partnership with your support broker with DDS, and you as the individual or family member are responsible for all of the hiring, all of the oversight. We do have an agency called Public Partnerships, PPL, which provides the fiscal management services and human resource supports. So PPL receives, for example, all of the timesheets for the support workers that are hired by individuals and families. And they are the fiscal intermediate that pays them. So they provide the payroll. They also house all of the human resource requirements, such as background checks and things like that. So PDP, the Participant Directed Program, really does offer the most flexibility for the individual and the most control and independence over their budget. Next slide. So I just wanted to talk about our self-direction numbers just because I like numbers and I'm really excited about them. Unfortunately, as people may know, throughout the current health emergency, much of our traditional service delivery has been interrupted, particularly the day programs. But we have noted growth in self-direction. In March, our total enrollment for both Agency with Choice and person-directed services was 1,404. And at the end of July, the numbers are 1,490. And just as a note, people seem to be choosing individualized day supports. The number of people enrolled in individualized day supports has also had a significant jump through the self-direction program. Next slide. So why self-direction now? I was recently asked to present at the Applied Self-Direction group to talk about what Massachusetts has gone through, because early on Massachusetts struggled with some high numbers with COVID-19 positive cases. And I really pulled out 4 things that I think are key benefits with self-direction during this time. So the first is individuals enrolled in self-direction really do have control of their supports, and they are allowed to select and hire their own staff. That's always challenging, as people who are on the call know. Hiring staff is a big time-consuming piece of self-direction. But in this case, with the pandemic and people having to be limited in where they go and what they can do and who their circle is, it means that individuals can hire from within their own circle of supports, in some cases relatives, in some cases relatives that live within their own homes. And that's really increased comfort regarding people's health and safety during this pandemic. So an example is there's a young woman who aged out of school during this time and was really struggling with the choice of self-direction and whether it was the right fit for her and her family. They decided to give it a try because none of the traditional day programs were open. And they did face some challenges, but they were able to identify a support worker. And since enrolling in self-direction, she's been able to make her own schedule. She's been able to allow more time about communicating, when she can come and go, what the transitions look like, what she wants to do. She's spending time with people that she trusts. And her worker follows her lead instead of asking her to follow their lead. This is a young woman who had some behavioral challenges in the past while she was in school, and her family and support workers and she have noted that since enrolling in self-direction, those episodes have really significantly decreased, which has been wonderful for her because she's not requiring a lot of hands-on restraint that she's required in the past. So next slide. Another benefit that supports for individuals who are self-directing their services during this pandemic experience less of a disruption than those who are receiving the traditional supports. For obvious reasons, as folks know, day habilitation, community-based day supports, and employment centers had to shut down during the state of emergency in Massachusetts. And individuals utilizing those supports had to find alternatives or go without supports for a period of time. So we met Jacob earlier, right? And he had already been enrolled in self-direction and was receiving supports through the person directed program when the pandemic arrived. However, throughout this time, he's been able to maintain his many volunteer positions, including delivering Meals on Wheels and all of the animal-related activities that he loves. And with proper precautions, face masks and PPE, almost all of his activities have continued despite the COVID situation. Next slide. So these are 2 other examples of folks who had been enrolled in self-direction were able to kind of pivot during this pandemic and utilize remote supports a little bit more easily due to the ability to adjust the expectations of their employees. So the staff that you hire have job descriptions that you write, and you can change those job descriptions. So folks were able to kind of transition to some remote supports if they weren't comfortable having individuals in their home supporting them through Skype or FaceTime, Zoom, what have you. They also were able, if they didn't have the proper equipment and technology to support that transition, they were able to use their budget to purchase tablets, laptops, smartphones, some of those some of that equipment that enable people to utilize remote support. Okay, next slide. So one of the things that I talked about earlier with the Real Lives Law, out of that came the idea of having family forums or forums for individuals during which you could learn more technical, ask questions, have it be interactive about self-direction. So these are some of those forums that are coming up. During COVID, we've, like everything else, adjusted those to be virtual. So they're offered via WebEx, they're not in person, and we're actually offering some more opportunities to learn about self-direction because there's been more interest. Next slide. We have 4 self-direction managers throughout the state. They're in each of the regional offices, so Southeast, Central West, Metro and Northeast, and these are the names of those self-direction managers. They're in place to support the training and the learning of both individuals receiving supports and family members interested, and also the staff in the area offices. And that's it. So any questions or discussions we can have now?
Well, thank you, Liz. That was really helpful just to have a good overview of how to use some self-directed supports, especially during this COVID time we're in. Anybody have some questions?
Yes, I do. Oh, sorry.
Okay, just unmute yourself and go right ahead.
My question has to do with if you're using self-directed supports. I know, like with agency with choice, you're saying the agency would be pre-approved by DDS. If you're doing self-directed supports and you're hiring your own people, different programs, what type of programs can you hire? Do they have to be like pre-approved by DDS, or what are the criteria?
So you would be hiring support staff that would be working directly with you. Mm-hmm. And that started a conversation with your service coordinator in the area office to identify the needs. So within self-direction, we have a lot of codes, and they, based on the code, is what you may be hiring into. So for example, there's individualized day supports, which I talked about earlier. So if you were hiring a staff person to support you through individualized day supports, your support broker would work with you to identify exactly what you want to do. Do you want to get a job? Do you want to be more involved in volunteer things in your community? What exactly are you wanting that support person to help you reach? What goals do you want them to help you reach? So when you would then you would then post a job opening and seek out people to apply for that job, interview them, and decide who you're going to hire. Once you identify a person that you want to hire, there are some things that have to happen. For example, a criminal background check and fingerprinting. And there's some paperwork that needs to be processed for that person to get hired. But that's your employee that you're hiring, so there's no agency involved in that.
So where would I post the ad for the job? Just regular newspaper or somewhere?
So there's a few different options, and that's a really good question. Some people come to DDS and they already know of somebody. They have an existing relationship with somebody, maybe a teacher they used to work with, or a next door neighbor that they're really connected to, something like that. So that's great, and that's easy when that happens, but not everyone has that. We have different resources on where to post jobs. There's something called Rewarding Work, which is a website where people looking for work in this field, and also where people who are seeking support workers can go. Some people post on care.com, some people post in the newspaper, some people post on like Monster and those websites. And again, that's something that your support broker can help you with, because they all know where kind of they're having good success at any given time and where things aren't working quite as well.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, good questions, Chelsea. We've got a couple in the chat box, Liz, from On. Is this only for adults after 22, or any DDS eligible clients can request this for self-direction at any age?
Right, so that's a great question. As you know, DDS has limited service options for people under the age of 22. So most of what I've been talking about today is for adult eligible folks after the age of 22 that have been prioritized for a service. There are a couple of programs through the Children's Autism Waiver and through DESE that offer a self-direction option. It's a little bit different than what I described today, but sort of the same concept about being able to really individualize those supports.
Okay, great. And then a follow-up, and what is the process to request for this program? Contact your DDS service coordinator?
Yep, so always working with your DDS service coordinator, that's a great starting point. Again, the family forums are, if you have more questions, I didn't get into a lot of the technical stuff today. It gets a little bit more into it. A lot of times the service coordinator will get even deeper because we want to make sure this is the best match for families, and particularly the person directed program. It's a lot, it can be a lot of responsibility. So that's the time when you really get into the details of what that responsibility is, and whether that or agency with choice is a better match.
Okay, and then Michelle was wondering, can you hire family members, and can that be the client's legal guardian?
So again, great questions. You can hire family members, but I believe they cannot be the legal guardian, which is sort of in line with our other guidelines around guardians.
Okay, and then Kristen was wondering, who determines the hourly rate of pay for support workers?
Yeah, again, wonderful questions, you guys. So you do as the employer. So the family member or the individual is the employer of record, and you would negotiate that within, your budget. You have to pay minimum wage. So in minimum wage, as you know, over the next few years is changing annually. And there are some kind of guide rails in place about kind of maximum and minimum. You would also want to develop some standards. So if you had somebody, if you wanted a specific expertise, so say you wanted to hire somebody that had a background in speech pathology, you may want to you may want to kind of look at what the going rate is, the competitive rate is, and adjust the hourly rate based on the information you find out. And again, your area office service coordinator, support broker can help you through that process.
Okay, great. And then Marshall and then Diane suggested that some area colleges and universities may allow you to post on their education or nursing departments, and that Simmons may have some folks looking for this type of experience. So Walter was wondering if there is a maximum budget amount per individual.
So this, I hate to say it depends, but I think it depends. So really what we try to do is we try to determine what the individual's vision is and what services you're looking for. But as people know or may not know, when you're a person who has no services and you're asking for a service, you have to get prioritized. So you may be asking for residential or for employment or day. So it really does depend on exactly what you're asking for. person-directed supports and agency with choice do not have a 24-hour component. So people tend to be a little bit more independent, but not always in these programs. So somebody that really does need a lot of self-care in 24-hour supports and is a priority with DDS may not be the best match for the PDP or the agency with choice. So I think we kind of look at what we have conversations to figure out what the goals are, what the visions are, what you're looking for, what you've been prioritized for. And then we sort of look at what would you be getting if you were choosing traditional services. And through those 3 different pieces of information, budget guidelines are kind of determined, right? So there's sort of a guardrail in place. And then the next step after that is to really dig a little bit deeper and start hashing out the hours and the schedule and things like that. And then that would kind of set the budget at that point.
Okay, thank you, Liz. Diane was wondering, can an individual in a day hab before COVID enter into self-direction temporarily?
So in order to be enrolled in self-direction, the individual either needs to, so I'm trying to answer the right way, Diane, bear with me. The individual needs to have DDS funding to enter into self-direction temporarily, or the area office needs to identify available funding. So because day habs are funded by Mass Health, that makes it a little bit more challenging.
All righty. And then Hezi is wondering, is it possible to know what an individual's budget would be before opting for participant-directed services so that one can make an informed decision comparing that to services one's getting through agency with choice?
Yep, that's an excellent question. And again, I think that's a conversation you would want to have with your area office, because there are pros and cons to both. So if you don't know what your agency with choice budget is, you can ask that question of your area office, and you could ask, you could even sit down and work with them to see what the comparison would be.
Okay, and then Jean and Joanne actually had very similar questions. Now, can an individual attend a CBDS or day hab on certain days and self-direct the others? And then, and then Joanne was also asking if you could use a mix of the traditional and self-direction.
Yes, you can use a mix, and I'm going to say the same thing. There has to be funding available from DDS. So if you're in a CBDS program, for example, and you only wanted to attend there, 3 days a week and want to utilize your funding for those other 2 to self-direct, you can do that.
Terrific. Okay, and Anne, I just unmuted you, so you had a question. I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand raised.
When I started with the PDP several years ago, it was much easier to use. Now I'm finding it's much restricted year after year to use my money in the way that I want to use it. I'd like to explain that. I used to be able to do things and go places with my support that I wanted to, and now I'm told that I have to do something where it's teaching me something. I used to be able to, let me talk before COVID, go places like the Topsfield Fair, do things that I enjoyed once in a while. And now it's not teaching me something, it's a fun thing, and I'm not supposed to be having fun on the PDP. Can you explain that?
And I'd have to follow up with the area office, because I'm not sure. I know there have been some limits set in place on purchasing tickets and things like that for your support workers.
Even if I were to purchase the tickets, the person they still won't pay the person to support me during the day.
Yep. So I'd have to look into what might be going on with that. I think that whenever even though individuals have their own budget, it is still state and federal funding that is going into the budget. So unfortunately we do, or fortunately, I don't know which way you want to look at it, we do still have to adhere to certain waiver standards and requirements in order to be able to continue to offer the support. So I think that that may be what is happening here. And I think that, that's something that we could talk about offline. It would be good to know more of the details.
But I can still go for a walk with the person for a few hours.
Right, because that's exercise, right? And health focused.
Yeah. Yeah, so it sounds like, Ann, that would be a great conversation to follow up with Liz after the webinar. And then Hezi was asking is, where can we find clear guidance on what expenses are allowed and which ones are not allowed? Is there a published list of do's and don'ts?
I don't know that that's a great question as well. I don't know that there's a published list, to be honest with you. But again, when you're having those discussions with your area office, those are great questions to bring up and ask. When you're having a discussion and talking about things like Ann's talking about that are really important to Ann, those are questions that need to be asked. I will be honest with you, in the last few years, there's been increased scrutiny just overall in all services, state funded and federally funded. So Ann's right, there are more parameters in place in the last several years than there had been historically.
Okay, all righty. Well, thank you. These were terrific questions. And I'm just wondering, we have just a couple more minutes for today's webinar. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to ask Liz? Or also, you can feel free to unmute yourself. Liz's contact information, by the way, is on the PowerPoint, which you'll all be sent a PDF copy after this webinar. And
can I ask a question?
Sure.
Hi, I'm Maria. I was just wondering, just to ask a maybe more pointed question, like as a person trying to figure this out, why isn't there a published list? Because it's hard to make decisions when you don't know what the options are.
As we talked about in the PowerPoint, it really is a partnership with DDS. It would really, I think, be hard for a family to. You can go on. There is a part of the DDS website about self-direction. I should say that, where there's some videos and testimonials and some information that is helpful for families to learn more about it, in addition to the forums that are being held. But I think really specific questions require the discussion with the area office and with the self-directed folks in the area office who really understand the details of the program. And at that time, you don't have to commit to the program until you have all of the answers and questions hammered out, because starting the program takes a lot of time and a lot of discussion and a lot of thought to get it set up the way you want it. So we do have guides in place. So I'm not saying we don't have guidelines. I'm just saying I don't know that it's published right now, but we do have guidelines in place, and those guidelines are shared with you when you're talking to the area office about what you'd like to do and what your vision is.
Okay, thank you. You know, and Liz, I do want to say that there was something that was published probably this late winter, early spring, that answered a lot more questions about what's allowable and not allowable, because there were some changes. And, you know, when you work with government funding, you know, we all know that can't always count on everything you want. So anyways, if I can find that, I will distribute it with the PowerPoint today.
That's great. And I do think so too. I just am not positive where it is, so I don't want to, but I will also research that and get that to Kerry so she can get it out.
Great. Okay. Jean Clapper. If everybody looks in the, thank you, Jean.
So that's a family support program.
Right, which is different than self-direction. But the family support guidelines.
Yeah.
Okay. There is information on it more, but I believe there was a separate document just for self-direction, because there was a lot of changes this past spring, as Ann was talking about. And then Hezi, you had your hand raised. Just I wonder if you want to unmute yourself.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, it's, you know, for like PayPal and iTunes, when there's some revision to the terms of service, there are notifications, pretty detailed. And I on the DDS website, I haven't found specific guidance about like what an exhaustive list of what one can and can't do. So, I mean, I'm at that website that you just sent, Liz.
Yeah.
It's illustrative, but it's not prescriptive. And so, and you know, I think I'm a little bit new to Massachusetts, but our experience with my experience with the eligibility determination is that there's a lot of discretion, and reading the Massachusetts regulations, there's a lot of discretion afforded to regional area offices, and some, I think, additional information that's updated as the federal programs are updated would be really helpful to making informed decisions.
And I think that is, you know, since, again, I just started in this position in June, and that's pretty consistent feedback that I've been hearing across the board. So that's something that, you know, we need to work on as a department.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate everybody's participation today. That's all. And I want to be respectful of everybody's many commitments for the day. Thank you. Somebody asked if we could have some answers to the questions sent along with this too. And what I can do is I can, it will be a recording, so you can be able to hear the questions and that sort of thing, and the answers to it. So I want to thank Liz Sandblom. I think it's pretty exciting, this new direction that DDS is going, and that, you know, all of you are having more options available. And, you know, there's more work to be done, like any new program or new support services, but working together and figuring out the barriers and the solutions is great. So thank you everyone for participating, and thank you, Liz, for taking the time. And I hope you all have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.